everybody. Welcome to another edition of WorldVenture in Review. We have Brenda Allen with us, and she'll be sharing some insights and about her ministries and everything. And we'll get to that pretty soon. One thing I want to let everyone know is we welcome your questions, your comments in the chat if you're joining us on social media. We do have a request that you do not mention the name of the city or country that Brenda does serve. So if you do mention that, I do have to delete the comments. So please make sure that you keep your questions pretty generic that way. But welcome, Brenda.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And whoever else is out there.
We got some people joining us from the website, from different social media platforms. So welcome, everybody. I mean, we are really glad you're here. Let's jump into a little bit of a lighthearted question, because I've been to Northern California, the San Jose area, the San Francisco area, and it's absolutely a beautiful area. And I'm just curious, now that you're stationed there as your base, what on your days off, because I know sometimes we get a day off as workers, on your day off, what is your favorite thing to do in Northern California?
That's a very easy question to answer, because the beach is my favorite place. I'm not really a lay out at the beach kind of person, but I love to go and listen to the waves, to walk now that I just had knee surgery and can walk further. I can walk up to a mile already. So yeah, the beach is definitely the place with a nice hot beverage.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember when I visited over there on the way to Fresno, it was loved the access to the beaches and some of the winding trails down the cliffs.
Yeah.
Just beautiful, just endless beaches. At least in that season I was in, there it wasn't crowded. But as a California girl myself, growing up in Southern California, you know, I'm familiar with the crowded beaches too. So let's dig a little bit into your story, because at WorldVenture in Review, we do like to learn a bit of people's testimonies, how they came to be who they are today. How did you become a believer, and when did your faith become your own?
I grew up in a home where I was taught about the truths of Jesus and the truths of the Bible from a very young age. And I was only about 3 years old when I realized that I had done things wrong. And I wanted God to forgive me for the things that I had done wrong, the things that we call sin. And so that was my first and most initial understanding at the kitchen sink with my mom. And so that was where I first asked God to forgive me. And it was in junior high, in middle school, at a camp, that I really realized that I wanted Jesus to be more than my savior. I also wanted him to be the one who I listened to and followed for my daily choices, not just something that was a saving faith, but something that was the way I was going to guide and listen to was his word. So that decision was made about the age 12.
That's great. So from a believer, and as you grew up, when did missions become part of your thought process, and why did you choose WorldVenture?
That started also very young. My parents went to West Africa to fill in for some missionaries with WorldVenture when I was 4. So actually, some of my very earliest memories come from West Africa. When I went back when I was 26, I smelled the smell and I knew immediately the whole process of how you make bricks one by one. So it really started from preschool was exposure to people who were sharing God's love and hope with others across cultures. So it started very young, and at age 16, I really made a commitment to preparing to want to be a part of sharing God's love and provision across cultural lines. Was a decision I made at a church conference when I was 16.
Wow, 16. Wow. Um, that's good focus. I mean, like, not everyone at 16 had usually has that focus. So what was the process of deciding to become a global worker, and why Africa, and why World Venture?
WorldVenture was just the most familiar to me. We'd had people that had come on home assignments and came to our homes, stayed with us. People that I had prayed for. We always had a bulletin board next to the table, in the kitchen table. So they were just people that I had prayed for years. So when some missionaries, when some people that were international workers came home on home assignment, and they said, we really need a school nurse. And that's what you're doing here in the States. It was like, okay, I would love to do that. And WorldVenture was the organization that was most familiar to me and the one that they were with. So I was really kind of a no brainer.
Awesome. Thank you. So we often get questions many times from people who are interested in serving. The one thing that intimidates them is the fundraising part. So, as in your time of raising support to go in your first initial and then maybe your second long term, because that potentially, I don't know, might have been two different support raising situations. Um, how did God use it to grow you as a global worker?
It was a fairly easy process, and the places and the people that I discovered with it, who wanted to partner with me, and many of whom have partnered with me for over 35 years, um, came very easily. And my home fellowship, my home church, was super supportive and has been all along. And I think I was appointed, or I was, commissioned or whatever. And it was only a couple months till I went out short term with WorldVenture for 2 years and raising funds, or looking for the people who, and I've been so blessed to find the support that I needed, not just financially, but in prayer and relationships. I am so rich in relationships, individual relationships, with people who care about my life and care about my ministry and know what's going on with me and know people by name. And um, it was not daunting at all in either time that I worked on it. And people have stuck and been able to continue. Some have passed on to heaven, but many have continued to this day.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. With so much in support raising, you develop these. At first, they're a connection for helping you get them partnering with you to help you get where God wants you to go. However, those connections soon become deeper and more like the brothers and sisters in Christ that as
Yes.
part of a Christian family. And those are connections that just leave an imprint on your life. I mean, it really just influences you a lot as a worker. And I've heard it that workers have also influenced their partners in different ways, made them think of things differently. So I have to agree, those rich relationships through the partner development process is just, that's the win-win, I think, for me.
Yeah.
Uh, so in your ministry profile, you talked about your first term was serving for 2 years, and then you went long term. So here's the question: what was the catalyst that caused you to consider the long term service in Africa?
Well, that came really fast. I was in West Africa for about 6 weeks, and I was like, you've been saying and thinking you would like to work cross culturally with kids, and you made that commitment when you were 16. You prepared as a nurse. I want to do this for a long time. I had no idea that would mean 36 years so far, but I made that decision only within 6 weeks of arriving short term that I wanted to stay in West Africa, and I wanted to continue to work with children and families. It's taken different shapes and different forms and different ministry roles over time, but it was made very quickly.
You there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. You glitched out. Could you repeat that last sentence for me?
I said I made that decision within 6 weeks of arriving on my short term term.
Perfect. So for those people serving in like 1 to 4 year terms with a mission organization, what kind of encouragement can you give to them on choosing to serve long term?
Wow. The generational impact and the long term, sometimes when you're connecting with people, they're at a different stage of life, and 10 years later you hear of the impact that you've made that you wouldn't have known of otherwise. So I am so grateful to have so many long-term relationships. One of the women who I mentored in high school is an international worker in Thailand now and has kids about ready to head off to college herself. So that is just such a blessing to have those knowledge of being a part and an impact on people's lives for the long haul.
That's great. And we have Mary Esther online, who's known you for a long time, and she's enjoying watching this particular interview. So thank you, Mary Esther, for joining us.
Thank you. Hi, Mary Esther.
So, how did you cope with having to move to a neighboring country after a civil war closed the school you worked at for 12 years? And how did you see God at work through what must have been a difficult situation?
It was an extremely difficult situation where I saw God's hand of protection on kids that I worked with, on families. I've been back to that area more than 15 times in the last 20 years. And I've seen how people can thrive and prosper after a very difficult season. And I saw the same thing in my own life. I lost some friends. I was able to leave the country because I had a passport. Others didn't have that freedom. And it was difficult. I was in the States under the care of medical professionals for almost 2 years before I redreamed and looked at neighboring countries and launched back to West Africa. I needed help. And my home fellowship, my home church was so gracious and welcomed me. And I formed an accountability group with the help of the missions director at my church and WorldVenture. That continues to this day. those women, those 5 women, have all been to my new country of service, and they have prayed for me and supported me. And we were together a couple of Saturdays ago for about 2.5 hours of prayer. So it is just amazing to me the restoration that can happen after a time of deep brokenness. And to this day, I struggle with PTSD, with anxiety and depression. I'm under the care of doctors, and I can thrive and work and live internationally and have had the support of WorldVenture, but it took time. It took significant time to be to a place of ready to relaunch.
Thank you for sharing that part, because that I didn't know that about you. So, but what courage to continue on to what God has called you to do, and still, and not letting it hold you back. What did you find over these? Your profile says more than 36 years of ministry.
Yeah, I think I left July 7th, I think it was 1990. So yeah, we've passed 36 years. Yes.
36 years of long-term commitment to where and what God has called you to. And in that 36 years, what did you find most challenging and most rewarding in serving?
Well, I think the long-term relationships are definitely the most rewarding. Um, Trying with my feeble attempts to be the hands and feet of Jesus. My tagline is sharing God's love and provision with the next generation. So I specifically reach out to students and their families. Definitely one of the most challenging things has been just the amount of time it takes to live and stay healthy, both with my mental health challenges, but also with, I was telling you before we started out this morning, I may have someone who helps me in my home with household tasks, but I also can often see my footsteps within 4 hours of the house being cleaned. So, simple things like preparing vegetables means washing, soaking bleach, rinsing with filtered water, peeling. I mean, it just takes a long time to live, and it's tiring. It's And I lived off the grid, so I did have solar panel enough to charge my computer, but definitely not enough for air conditioning. And it's up to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's hot.
And it said in your thing you lived in a mud hut for sometimes.
Yeah, I had a mud hut with a straw roof, kind of like you would picture in a village when I was doing language learning, and I've continued to relationships with family in the village, but that was early on in my last term of service, where I lived half a week for about 2 years. But I did have a cement block house in town that had 4 bedrooms.
Okay, it looks like we may have lost Brenda a little bit. She'll be back on, and we'll continue with that question as soon as she gets back on. Thank you, Barbara. I'll make sure she sees that message. As you know, we're live streaming this live, so sometimes what happens is internet issues happen, just like at your normal Sunday live streams. That can happen sometimes. So this is a really good chance, as you're hearing their story, to go ahead and put in your questions so that we can make sure we get them asked. So Brenda will be back on just a few minutes. Just had a bit of a connection glitch there. But again, we love your comments and questions. They're quite the encouragement to our guests that we have on. So go ahead and use this time to put in your questions and comments while we wait for Brenda to come back on. We have just briefly lost her. Okay, here we go. She is back on. All right. Brenda, we got Barbara on, and she says, your courage and tenacity in the face of so many challenges is inspiring.
Yeah, Barbara is one of those special ladies who's part of my accountability group and has walked and pretty much received numerous texts a week from the women in my small group, my accountability group. Have loved on me and cared for me for years. So she's got an inside seat, and I'm thankful for that.
Perfect. Now we stopped at Mud Hut, and you were living there and language learning. But what was the most rewarding in serving in those past 36 years?
Well, just to tell you one story, I have a gal who I call my daughter. I have many who I call my kids, but one who I call my daughter. She's not officially, adopted or related to me by blood, but she's been a huge part of my life for the last 15 plus years. And we've pretty much did daily life together. And even today, we talk at least 5 times a week whenever the internet's up and working. And walked her through her high school, her young adult years, her marriage, multiple miscarriages and death of 2 infant children. And now she's got a little boy, a precious little guy, her 7th pregnancy. So it's a privilege to be able to do life over a long period of time with a precious woman like her. She is not a Jesus follower, but she loves me and I love her, and I'm glad to have her companionship in my daily life.
That's actually that's beautiful. Yeah, those walking with somebody through their different life phases is just so important. So now to the question. For some that know you, it's not really a question because I know you, but for some that don't, that are watching today, what do you do with WorldVenture now? And what are you doing in Africa from a distance? And do you ever go back to West Africa?
How long do I have?
Just go ahead. You got time. You got time. You got
time. 18 months ago, I made the transition to being based in West Africa to being based here in the States. I still make regular trips at least yearly. This year it's been twice in West Africa. I spent the months of January and February there, and I was in West Africa for a Bible dedication in May. So in the States, I volunteer with some like-minded faith-based organizations. When I worked in West Africa, I worked a lot with adolescents, specifically young adolescents, middle schoolers. And amazingly, God provided a role for me as a teacher to middle schoolers here in the States as a volunteer worker. And I teach classes on bullying, boundaries, decision-making, healthy relationships, effective communication, personality styles. And I'm able to do that in private and public schools here in the States with a faith-based organization. And that has been a joy that I've gotten to understand and know a little bit more about this culture after being away so long, but still being able to work with kids in my favorite age group. Work with national students in the States. We meet near a local college regularly and to develop and to help them assimilate, be family for them on this side of the pond. Most of them are from Asia, who come to study in the Silicon Valley where I live. And so that's a different culture, but I have crossed cultures and I have bounced back and forth. So in that way, I'm able to come alongside them and befriend them and be family on this side of the pond to a few of them and to share God's love and provision with them as well as companionship. So those are two ministry things that I do here in the States as a volunteer, but I also continue to mentor couples. I was already doing that as a distance on the phone because a lot of the women who had lived in my home over the years married or didn't marry but moved to other parts of the country. So even when I was in my country of service, I was doing that by phone and then we'd get together once a year. Well, that's still possible because they can come to visit while I'm there and we can talk about life stuff, about infertility, about
Okay, it looks like we're having a bit of trouble with the internet. Thank you, Sandra, for your comment. We will share that with Brenda when she gets on and she finishes explaining. But yep, these things sometimes do happen with internet disruptions. So this is your opportunity to put your questions in if you're following us on Facebook or on YouTube or Twitch or LinkedIn, X. So feel free to use this time, this pause. She'll be right back. Just a little bit of issue with some internet on her end. So we're waiting for her to come back on. So again, use this opportunity to put in the chat any questions you may have so we can get to those as well. But thank you all for joining us. She'll be right back. Again, internet glitches, they do happen, unfortunately, but we love bringing you these stories, and we love to be able to share just the kind of work that God is doing through all these global workers that we have had as a guest. So we're just waiting for her to jump back on. So those of you who've just joined, don't go away just yet. We're not done. As she says, she was just explaining what she's been doing lately, and we're getting into the deeper question of her work with us at WorldVenture and in the school districts and all that. So waiting for her to get on. So again, put your questions in. If you need the time to type them in, this is your chance. And thank you for those joining us on the web. I see you. I don't see who you are, obviously, but I do see you. And I'm really glad you're here. All righty. So hopefully she'll be able to get back on. This happened about 10 minutes ago, and she was able to jump back on. So stay with us, everyone. We will have her on shortly again. All right, we're just waiting for her to get back on. A lot of the times with these live streams, we are dependent upon the other person's internet, so sometimes it happens. Again, put your questions in or comments, any additional that you have. You have a chance. On a bonus, if you feel led, maybe write out a prayer in the chat that I could read back to Brenda when she gets back on, so that she knows you're praying for her. But do stay with us. Again, internet glitch, just waiting for her to get back on. Just waiting for her to get back on. Perfect, Barbara. I like that. I like that question. Good question. Hopefully we get her on soon so she can answer that question when she's done answering my question. Thankfully, there's no monsoon today in Arizona, so I should be able to. We should be able to stay online for the online. For those of you just joining, we did lose Brenda a bit in with her internet glitched, so waiting for her to get back on. Worst case scenario, if she is unable to get back on, we will, I'll make sure your questions are answered and comments are sent. But let me just check to see if she is able to. We should be hopefully getting her back on. I'm sending her a message. Hopefully she gets it. We are just in the middle of trying to get her back on. Her internet failed. So hopefully we can get her back on. This is a chance for those of you watching that if you want to hop over to Facebook or YouTube from the web, and you can put in a question if you have it. You've got a little bit of time. Waiting to hear whether Brenda is able to jump back on her. Here we go. We're back. Perfect. So there we go. Awesome. Thank you, Brenda. I was afraid we had lost you for a minute there. So
I expect this in West Africa, but I don't expect this here in California to do this. But streaming is very hard there. No chance of watching movies because it just doesn't work.
Oh man. So you were talking about what you do now. You were on the last thing you spoke on was you were on talking about the school district, working with a faith-based organization, going and visiting West Africa. That's where we left off.
Yeah, I have been privileged to continue to work with kids, to still work with WorldVenture, but to be a volunteer here in the States, as well as coming alongside family. I've been able to serve students, which I have done in West Africa, but just in a different way here. I also recently have started some oversight in a center for grieving children in Eastern Congo, right where the Ebola is happening, and there's ongoing political upheaval. So, taking a role for some missionaries who are above retirement age and wanting the ministry to continue. So, Even though it's at a distance, there's a lot I've been able to do both in East and West Africa now as a new spot of oversight of ministry.
Awesome. And we have a comment and a question. So first of all, we want to show you from Sandra Thompson. They're the global directors of Africa. Thank you for sharing your stories with us, Brenda, for the many ways that you serve. But we have a
Thank you, Sandra.
We have a question from Barbara. What are some of the challenges in working with international college students from other continents?
Probably, it surprised me a little bit because I hadn't really pre-thought about it. But many come from very secular backgrounds and have not really had the opportunity to explore faith in any realm. And also people who are able to study in the US significantly have a lot of economic resources. And that is something that is a little different than West Africa, as far as having the resources to be able to study, to be able to travel, to leave your passport country and go to school somewhere else. So one of the challenges is for me is building bridges, finding our common ground. I'm 40 years older than most of them. So economic differences, faith differences, and just common ground have been challenges for me building relationships with international students.
So there's the prayer request as well, a little bit, I think, too.
Definitely.
So, yeah. Where have you seen God at work in your ministry now? Maybe share one story.
I had one student who was a middle schooler. And in the sessions that I teach, we usually teach 10 or 12 sessions in a school at a time on the supplemental courses. And one of the young men just seemed to kind of be on the edge quite a bit. So several times when my co-teacher was instructing, I'd sit down and just kind of have a little side conversation with him. And I could just really tell that his self-confidence, he had some second language or third language challenges, I don't know which. And it was good for me to see his face light up when he realized that he could make choices himself and that he could express himself. Not that he raised his hand or fully engaged after that, but I could tell that there was a interpersonal connection, which was helping him to process the information, even though he had some challenges. And that just brought me joy to see that he was engaged and not being on the outside.
And what kind of encouragement can you give our church partners to consider a cross-cultural ministry to the different people groups in their city?
Well, the diaspora, or people who are away from their ethnic or familiar passport country, is just growing by leaps and bounds. And here in the valley where I work in San Jose, migration and people moving in and out, especially with technological jobs, is huge. And a lot of people, like international students, but others away, even like me when I was in West Africa, I'm looking for family. I'm looking for relationships. And hospitality is huge. I found that in Africa, and I find that here. Hospitality might mean inviting someone to a restaurant here where you'd invite them to your home in West Africa. But relationships, especially those who are displaced from family and friends, is a huge way that you can build bridges with others across cultures. And asking questions about life, habits, things they're celebrating, just normal companionship questions. Get beyond in your workplace. Hi, how are you? And spend time. Quality time is my love language, and one of the things that I teach middle schoolers about. And I find that most people, whether that be their love language or not, really appreciate that.
Mhm. Yeah, and a lot of times, when I first was getting into missions, I basically someone from Missions Door actually showed me a little bit of a glimpse of what it was like inside an international student's life. They want to know sometimes about American holidays and join in, and they want to know, you know, they want someone to go go to karaoke places with them if you're Asian. But I found that fascinating to me. And what was disturbing is when I interviewed the student, she said, Americans are very busy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we're a very task oriented culture,
yep.
and not as much about being and a lot more about doing. And that's one of the cultural values that I miss from West Africa. People would come and show up and hang out at my house, and they might be there a couple hours. And here I say, "You want to get together?" And they'll say, "How about 3 weeks from Tuesday?" It's just different, really different.
It is. It is most definitely. So switching gears a little bit, you've got a project you're working on, and we've got the QR code up in the corner. If you're interested in learning more or making a gift, you can scan that QR code. We'll have the link available in the blog post later as well. Um, Tell me, what is Compassion Needs and what is needed for it?
Well, I realized uh, many years ago that there are a lot of people who don't have the resources they need for development, for education, for crisis situations like traveling to a family funeral or getting the medical care that they need. So I have been able, with my compassion funds over the years, to help people with education, whether it be tools to do their apprenticeship as a carpenter, or whether it actually be with school fees or registration fees. There's a young man whose mother passed away and left 5 sons,
Mm,
who I've been involved with for a number of years. And for 4 years in a row, he took his exit exams from high school. It took him 4 years to pass that, and he passed that a couple months ago.
nice.
So he is bound for school, further education this fall, because the country administration decides where you're going to study and what department you're going to study based on your scores.
Mm,
He doesn't know what he'll be studying or where he'll be studying, but in our country, but some of those monies would go to help him go to school because he doesn't have the means, lives with elderly grandparents who are disabled, and so I've been able, through my compassion friends, to help people with operations, help people with getting the prescriptions they need. And as a nurse, I'm often able to say, okay, well, send me a picture of your prescription. and say, well, there's 3 things on here that you absolutely have to have, because they can't afford 12. So I'm able to help with some of those practical needs, sometimes at a crisis moment, sometimes over a long haul for a medical condition that is chronic.
Mm. It sounds like a great fund. Is there any particular needs right now that need covering?
Well, this fall, school will start in October. And I think last year there were 17 kids that I helped go to school. So that will be the most pressing need, is for helping kids pay their registration fees, pay for their school supplies. Most kids go to public school, some go to private school, but to help them with their education expenses would be the most pressing need for the next couple months.
So as you hear that, if you feel led, scan the QR code and go ahead and make a donation of 25 or 100 or whatever comes to your heart. Make your donation, or make it a monthly donation if you want. But the link is right there. If you scan the QR code, we'll have the link up at the blog for you to click on if you want to look at it later this afternoon. But I do encourage you to make a gift if you feel led to help with these students so they can get their education. So Brenda, how can people be praying for you personally and professionally?
Well, those people that I are part of my closer circle know that this summer I had a total knee replacement. And so I'm up to walking a mile. I can do the exercise bike for, at least 10 minutes at a time. So I have my full range of motion back, but I really would like to get to the place where I'm good at stairs, where my balance is a bit better. So that's a personal prayer request, is for my health. Professionally and ministry wise, a prayer request would be that as I start this school year, some of which with ongoing relationships that I have in West Africa, that the internet would actually work so I can make regular phone calls and not just leave voice messages, which I do a lot because we just can't keep a connection. So it's great to have a dialogue. I have one that I got this morning that's 17 minutes long, from one of my kids whose wife lived with me for 3 years. And he is a pastor in a mining town in the northern part of our country, right near the border of a very troubled region. But I've got 17 minutes. I wish we could have talked for 30 and gone back and forth. But because of the internet hassles, that's a concern, that it would work. And secondly, for here, as I develop relationships with new students and at new schools, that God would open the schools that He wants us to teach in, um, life skills that kids can have that will help them make healthy and less risky choices and thrive during their middle school, high school, and adult years.
All right, you have those prayer requests. Do you have more?
Oh, sure, I could list many more, but mostly for a friend in my country of service in West Africa, uh, who is in a very troubled marriage situation. And specifically, I would pray that there would be somebody who she could come to trust, that she could share with. Because right now she feels very alone and isolated and doesn't have a lot of choice in the situation that she's in. So she is not a follower of Jesus. But I would ask that she would find comfort And one day, like Hagar, she would call out to God in a way that she would believe that he hears her, because she is suffering and she is in a rough spot. But there is a God who hears. And I look forward to the day when one day she knows him not just as creator, but as savior. So I would pray that for many of my friends that I talk to regularly who do not have a faith relationship with the Almighty God, who they are aware of but often fear rather than having a personal, intimate relationship with.
All right, you've got the prayer requests out there. We'll be sure to post later just the prayer portion so that you can get a reminder to continue praying. Oh, did you have more to add, Brenda?
No, that's a great
Okay.
place to stop.
Okay. So we'll post that, just that section too, so that you can get that and be reminded to pray. We have a comment from Instagram on Future World Traveler. I'm just hearing about this. It seems awesome. Mission for God, let's go. And thank you for your enthusiasm. And be praying for her prayer requests. So
Thank you.
Brenda, thank you for sharing all this. Thank you for what you do. And thank you for coming on in spite of the challenges of trying to stay on.
Yeah, really.
You know, it's funny. It just depends where you are in the house sometimes. Sometimes even I have a spot in the kitchen that really does not work real well with internet for whatever reason. But you know, that's what happens when we live stream, but it is so worth it to bring your stories here and let people meet you, get to know you, and know how to pray for you, and know what God is doing in the world. So thank you for sharing today.
Thank you, Nikki, and thanks for those of you out there listening and those of you who will listen to the recording later.
Yep. And if you have any questions later, do you have a newsletter?
I do. I send out a newsletter that is full of pictures, few words, but many pictures every month. It comes out the first of every month. So, yes, I do. And you can get that at my name, B period Allen, ALLEN, at worldventure.com. And I think that's in the chat maybe as well.
Yeah, and we'll put it on the blog later for those watching on the website as well, so they can get that. And if you wanted to touch base on some prayer requests, you can feel free to contact her about that privately. If you're watching this when we are no longer live, feel free to either send us a question for her and we can forward it on, or you can contact her directly with the email there to ask further questions. So thank you, everyone. We won't be having a live stream next week, but we will have another live stream a week after. We'll have 2 live streams. Uh-oh, did we just lose? Oh, okay. We'll have 2 live streams coming up the first week in September. We'll have Marty Shaw and taking Randy Hacker's place as a co-host with Joshua Project to pray. So to pray for the unreached. So it's the first Tuesday of every month usually, and that's the first Tuesday in September, I believe. So whatever that date is, going by memory there. We also have another World Venture in Review coming up that week. So as you look at our events page, it's worldventure.com/events. And you'll see all those events listed. In fact, looking at it, it's Joshua Projects the week after. So, but do join us. We plan on bringing you an online Bible study soon in the fall, and we'll be releasing that information soon as well. So thank you, everyone. See you at the next episode.